Welcome to this episode of Musical Instruments with Mr. Pages. Today we're going to be talking about the lowest instrument in the string family, which is the double bass. As you can see, the double bass is actually taller than myself, especially with the tuning peg on the bottom, not tuning peg, but the peg on the standing peg on the bottom. That peg actually makes it taller than me, but usually it's about the same height as myself. To give you an idea, I am 5'10", so this instrument is quite big. And it's quite large too. It's wider than myself if I stand right behind it. So the string family, they all have similar parts. As if we already talked about the violin or the cello or the viola, they all have similar parts, starting with the scroll at the top, which is the thing that's very, very squiggly at the top, and then we have the tuning pegs. On the double bass, it's a little different because the tuning pegs on here are actually a screw mechanism. So if I come closer to the camera, you can see that it rotates accordingly, makes it tighter or looser, and then makes the instrument higher or lower respectively. On the other string instruments, you actually have to push it in to keep it where once you tighten or loosen it, you push it back in, and that's how it stays tuned. But in the case of the double bass, we have the screw mechanism, which keeps the strings tightened accordingly. Then we have the neck, which doesn't have any frets like a guitar or an actual electrical bass. This is fretless, so I can go like this with no problem at all. So this is the double bass. We also have the bridge, and then we have the hollow body sound shell. So this instrument goes quite low. If I take out my bow here and play this string right here, which is the low E string, that is the lowest note of the string family. This instrument can also go quite high, but usually you won't see a double bass player playing like that. One fun fact about the double bass, it is tuned differently than the rest of the string family. The string family is typically tuned in fifths. So if I was to play this note and then this note, they would be fifths. But in the case of this instrument, this is tuned in fourths. How can you tell? Well, it sounds like the first few notes of "Here Comes the Bride," so on and so forth. If you played the first or any two strings on a higher string instrument like the cello, viola, or the violin, it would be the first two notes of Star Wars, the theme. So on and so forth on that. So anyway, here's the double bass. You can play it arco with the bow, or you can also play it pizzicato, which is just the fancy Italian word for plucking. So those are the key facts about the double bass. The double bass is usually, depending on what kind of brand you get, can be anywhere between $5,000 to $15,000. This one's right smack dab in the middle, so it's about a $10,000 model. This one is 2 years old. And then the other big fact about it is that it's very, very fragile. Other expensive instruments in the band tend to be a little bit more sturdy, like the tuba, or the percussion instruments like the marimba or the timpani. But this is very, very fragile, so you have to take very, very good care of it because of the wood. You want to make sure it's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's not too humid, it's not too dry in the room, because that can cause the wood to warp or crack. Same thing with the strings. If the strings get too tight, they'll just snap. So you got to make sure it's taken care of. So anyway, here's a quick excerpt from The Incredibles. The orchestra was working on this last year at Y-High, and now I'm just going to try playing it for you. Note, I am not a string player, so it might not sound that great, but you get the idea when it comes to this instrument. So here we go. As you notice, you probably didn't recognize any of the incredible stuff because this is the double bass. How often have you listened to a rock band or a hip hop song and there was a bass track going behind it and the bass had the melody? Probably never. So therefore, same thing with the double bass, it rarely ever gets the melody. It's just the backbone of the orchestra or the symphonic band in which it is playing. Anyway, so this is the double bass, the lowest member of the string family, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Musical Instruments with Mr. Pages.